Well, hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's good to see everybody here yet again on another episode of Three Up, Three Down. I'm excited to have everybody in for us today. And we're continuing on here with our third part of the Preparing Umpires for the Upcoming Season theme. We spent the first week taking a look at preparing ourselves mentally and physically. And then the last 2 weeks, last week and then this week again, we're going to go ahead and take a look at building an umpire program. And last week specifically, we would have looked at, what got you involved into umpiring, what has kept you involved into umpiring, specifically with Little League. And then from an understanding of that, we started to think about that in the context of recruiting, retaining, and building a program. So we're still in that major theme here today of building a program. I'm really excited to have a guest on with us here that'll talk a little bit about us. I'll talk about here in just a second as well, specifically about recruiting and some ideas that he may be able to share in it from his experience with military recruiting and how that may be able to apply to us for our purposes in this avocation of Little League. So I'm excited to go ahead and get ready to get started with that stuff here today. Now, to kind of tie us back to the last week or so, I prompted us with this question of what's one thing that your program does that you think all programs should be doing? What's one thing your program does that all programs should be doing? And we're going to share an answer to that question here in a little bit later today as well. So I want that one at least to be at the forefront of the announcements and things like that here at the start of our meeting today. And that way you can let it marinate and think, and then I'll have you start to drop some of those answers in the chat here in a little bit later. So what's one thing your program does or a program you know of does that you think all programs should be doing? We'll compile a list, share out those answers, and talk through that one here for the most part today. A couple announcements and reminders before we go ahead and get started. First of all, as we mentioned here yesterday, as we mentioned last week, the umpire registry should be coming updated with the rules seminars, the virtual rules seminars that are coming up for us, the webinars in February and March. So those are upcoming to us. Pretty excited about those things as well. And again, you'll be able to find that in the umpire registry. I just looked before we hopped on. Wasn't updated just yet. I'm sure technology and the folks at Little League are working on that, and eventually you'll get there. There are still two softball clinics that are out there. I think one's this weekend and then one next week as well for you to go ahead and take a look at too. Okay, so some things there at least to go ahead and be aware of here upcoming for us. And then remember here, I'm not going to go away from this idea of preparing mentally and physically. Last week I reminded you, as we get ready to start and think about the 2021 season, start to think about 2 or 3 specific things that you want to intentionally improve upon upcoming this season. And that way you're ready to go ahead and work on those things and beginning to come up with a plan there. Physically, conditioning, nutrition, and strength training and things like that. Don't have to go haywire or anything like that. Just like I said, make sure that we are able to do the job we're required to do without huffing and puffing in between. So continue to think about preparing mentally and physically then for the season. And then last piece of it then happens to be accountability. So make sure then here that we're considering those ideas and making sure that we're making the necessary preparations here for us to go ahead and get into the 2021 season. All right, there's all the announcements I have here for us. Let's go ahead and jump right on in. Like I mentioned, the theme today is building an umpire program, and we'll talk about the culture piece of it in a large part here today, but recruiting people is a huge piece of that one as well. So I'm really excited to welcome Dalton Rose on with us. Dalton is the brother of DJ Rose, both of which umpired for me back in Dayton at Huber Heights Little League, so they're both Little League guys, now living in northern Indianapolis, and Dalton has had almost a decade's worth of experience in the militaries with the U.S. Marine Corps, and served a while as a military recruiter in northern Indianapolis. Was actually the number one recruiter in the eastern United States for quite some time here. So I'm really excited to welcome Dalton on with us here, not only because he's a great person and he has Little League experience, but also then he's got a bunch of different experiences from the military, and then in his current role as an assistant director of admissions at IU at Indiana University, to go ahead and shed some light here to the whole idea of recruiting pieces, so we can begin to think about building a program and talking about things there. So Dalton, first of all, welcome to the show, and then secondly, man, thanks for your service and for the time that you've given to us in the military, and congratulations on your recent retirement. So real happy for you, and congratulations on the new job.
Thanks, Stu. I appreciate it. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about something that I'm passionate about. Like Stu said, I spent the last 9.5 years in the Marine Corps. The first 6, I was a corrections specialist, military policeman, Did a little bit of cross country chasing and Federal Air Marshals. And then I transitioned due to orders to be a recruiter in Fort Wayne, Indiana for about 13 months. I was really successful at that. So they meritoriously promoted me and moved me down to northern Indianapolis, where I was the staff non-commissioned officer in charge of the recruiting station there. And recruiting and talent acquisition and retaining people is something that I'm passionate about because it got me away from using the physicality to using words and figuring out people's motives, their wants, needs, their motivators, their interests, and how to keep them entertained in a business setting. So I'm going to be honest, it's been probably, I don't know, 9.5 years since I've umpired my last Little League game. So I'm out of the swing a little bit. I've watched my brother several times on ESPN. That was pretty cool. But in person here in Indiana. So I definitely am passionate about Little League. I love watching my brother umpire. It's something cool that our family gets to share because our dad does it as well. But tying recruiting into Little League and how you guys can attract and retain umpires, there's just one thing that sticks out to me. In the military, we call it a WIFM, or the what's in it for me. When you think about recruiting or talent acquisition as a whole, you have to come at it from the other person's point of view as to what they're going to see is in it for them. So a lot of people, like even if you were to go out and do active volunteer work, which all of you gentlemen do, there has to be something in it for you or something that keeps you driving you. I'm sure everybody that's on this call today is very passionate about Little League and helping the players and coaches become better. You may just be in love with the game, which is awesome. But there's some people that need some sort of referrals, and some things that we do in the Marine Corps is we offer monetary referrals via promotions. So that's one way that we do it. And one thing that I was thinking that you guys would be able to do is just small little incentives. If you got so many referrals from one umpire, start out with like an engraved clicker, or I'm sorry, it's not a clicker, indicator. It's an indicator. And you work your way up from an indicator to maybe a shirt or a hat. Get something embroidered, something nice that's tangible that these gentlemen can work towards. And a goal, maybe even do like a mask or a chest protector for a lot of referrals. Not something that's just easily attainable. Another thing that was very good for me was social media and having a social media presence. I know it may be difficult now since we're all getting older, but Instagram and Facebook ads are huge. The cool thing about those is you can identify a target audience and go after that. So if you guys are looking for some younger guys to umpire the younger kids, or even like upwards of 20 and 30 years old, you can create a Facebook or Instagram ad that targets one specific area based off of geographic and age location. So you can even target all Facebook users between 18 and 26 that live in Columbus, Ohio. And it'll pop up as a sponsored ad on their Facebook timeline when they're scrolling through. Another thing was Indeed posts. People are on there looking for jobs all the time. They're also on there looking for volunteer work. Indeed is something that's huge. You can also add in extra questions in there to ensure that you're getting the right candidate before they hit the apply button. Pictures. Everybody loves seeing pictures. I know when my brother got done with the Senior World Series last year, it was super cool seeing a bunch of pictures that were taken and posted and flooding all those. You can also incorporate those with the sponsored ads that you put out there, as well as if you made like District 6 Instagram page, you can use separate hashtags of like baseball, Little League, umpire to attract people that are following those hashtags as well in your local area. Another big thing I was thinking about, just because I have the background, I don't know where everybody is located, but I guarantee you there is a National Guard or a Marine or military reserve unit. For those of you that are not aware, volunteer hours and letters of appreciation are huge in the military. For me, myself, if we had 3 letters of appreciation in 3 years, we got a volunteer service medal. And those medals put you very high up on the promotion scale. So if you can get in front of these reserve units or the National Guard units, or even like a Young Marines program in your local unit, and offer them letters of appreciation for individuals, or if you got a bunch of people giving them a unit certificate accommodation, and that's something that you can just type up individually, sign it. It doesn't have to be anything professional, but that's something they can put into their training file and get recognition for it in their careers. Police officers, firefighters, they have the same thing as well. Another thing I was thinking about is camaraderie events. I'm sure you guys have like lunches or cookouts or whatever with your teams, but maybe having a barbecue and bring a friend and have it at the actual field and do some role play scenarios with each other as more of like a training exercise, as well as getting in shape and maintaining the shape, to ensure that you guys are doing it together, building camaraderie, because everybody loves being a part of a team. So those were just a couple notes I typed down. So the big ones are referrals, social media, camaraderie events, and hitting up the military units to help you out a little bit.
Dalton, man, thank you. That's great stuff. And I think, in our conversation last week about what attracted us into umpiring, what got us hooked, and then what has kept us, you touched on a bunch of those things that we definitely already touched base with and really kind of thought of, but yet in a different context. And I think it's really important to note that, like, the military does an incredible job at recruiting men and women to serve our nation. And some of those themes that we've obviously started to brainstorm and think about, very evident. And Dalton, I know you said you only had a couple. I think I took down 8 different points that you would have made in my notes as well. But I think one of the biggest things that stuck out to me that he started with is, figuring out what is in it for other people. So, figure out what motivates other people to kind of help you begin with recruiting. And the whole ideas of referrals, incentives, social media, and things like that, we'll definitely circle back to here once we start to take a look back at that document. So, Dalton, thanks for taking a few minutes here to at least share some of that insight. It's always great to hear it from, different perspectives and kind of a reassurance that, number one, what we are doing is on the right track. And then secondly, to hear it in a different way that may also spark other different ideas too. And you definitely gave us some things tangibly to build off of as we begin to try and recruit umpires in what is potentially going to be a really challenging time period to recruit umpires amid a pandemic. So Dalton, thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking some time to share those ideas with us.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and turn our ideas to the chat. And I think, DJ, you probably started us off here in the chat with just a typing of that question. So let's go ahead and start to brainstorm and to share out, because I know that there's some people on this call that I really respect and really admire the types of jobs they do. Kevin Southall does a great job with his umpire program in Ohio 11. Don Mason does a fantastic job with his in Indiana 6. And many of you guys have also either been a part of or are running organizations that are thriving here. So I want to pick everybody's brains, and there's a question in the chat to go ahead and begin to spark this conversation. And that question is just very simply, what is one specific thing, one thing that your program does that you think all programs should be doing? Okay, one thing your program does that all programs should be doing. Try and just give us like a one-liner, and we can talk a little bit more about that one. It's just to kind of spur some conversation here. So take a minute, think about one thing your program does or a program you've been involved in, one thing that's done that you've thought, man, that's really great. Everybody should be doing this. And go ahead and drop those answers into the chat, and that'll go ahead and give us at least an opportunity to go ahead and think about building a list and figuring out ways in which we can continue to build an umpire program. So I'll give us a brief second here to go ahead and populate the chat with some ideas there. In my time as a local UIC and things like that, I've got some ideas that I'll share along with you here too from that document again. But go ahead and continue to populate that chat with some ideas, some things that you thought in an umpire program have been something that everybody should be doing. All right, great. Answers are coming in here. Kevin and Mark's are both very similar here. So if we take a look at Kevin's, the end of year holiday party with door prizes and appreciation awards, that was something that Dalton touched base with. Absolutely, that appreciation is huge. And I think the other thing that Dalton also alluded to, I had never thought about, was also use that as a recruiting event. Bring a friend to it, and they can just basically have an opportunity to experience it too. You never know who you may get recruited out of there with that one. So that one's great here free local clinics. And I think the one thing that I've been most excited about, Mark, with that suggestion in this pandemic is the power of Zoom to unite us all together as we're doing here, to offer something that is not necessarily too taxing from either the instructor's point of view or the attendee's point of view to come and enjoy for free. So that's great. Steve, junior umpire program, we'll get into that one too. Being approachable as a UIC, we'll talk about that as well. Dave, very good. Scheduling program definitely helps as well, Rob. Communication programs and platforms out there too. That definitely makes planning very much a big part of it as well. So very good there. Tony says to pay for the uniform, things like that. So we've got a couple really good ones here. Train and use mentors is another great one as well. Dale, I'm kind of interested in here. Bling, basically incentives. Dale, if you wouldn't mind popping on, what are some incentives here that you found that Rich may use that has been successful in retaining and recruiting guys?
Well, if you help out, like in the midsummer wooden bat tournament, you get special hats. You get jerseys, different color uniforms, shirts, those kind of things with special patches on them. So just little incentives, rewards, non-monetary rewards, but just, rewards that make you feel like your volunteering counts.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point there. Dave, I think you mentioned a huge one about being approachable as a UIC. Could you talk to me a little bit, Dave, about some of the things that you try to do to be an approachable UIC?
When I took over this job, the old UIC had the same umpires working the district semis and finals year after year. You didn't see them at all through a lot of the tournaments. What I did was, when a high school game, I'll show up and I get time out the games, talk with guys doing those games. And at times I'll use guys from the local league and various levels in the tournaments. And one thing I try not to do, if I can avoid it, is I try not to do the district finals at any level. I always try and put different guys doing the finals.
I think that's a great point, Dave, and one that we definitely touch base with, that our job as leaders is to create opportunities for other people to grow. I was talking to DJ because DJ had umpired for me quite a while in District 8 back in Dayton, Ohio, and he and I, when we were talking, he mentioned that he was he had never worked like an elimination game. Is that right, DJ? With me.
Yeah, when we were speaking last week, just kind of preparing for today, it took me a second, and I was just sitting back and I was thinking, and I was like, barring maybe like a random 90-foot game where we might have just needed the bodies, like maybe like a Biggs, Art, rest in peace, or a seniors like elimination game. I've never worked, and it kind of sucks, but never had the opportunity to work an elimination game with him, and it was because he was the first person to pull himself off of the game to allow guys the experience to get those games, get those reps, feel that sense of pride. I don't care who you are, you like being on the field when that time is there. We all work, we get to regionals and World Series, we want to be the plate of the final. Like that's the goal. It took me a second, and I can't believe it, but yeah, we've never worked an elimination game together. And it's because of his leadership of pulling himself off of the field to evaluate and give honest feedback, but B, to afford other guys the opportunity to have those roles.
Yeah. Thanks for those words, DJ. But and I'm not alone in that one. I mean, I learned that lesson from other people, whether they didn't teach it to me the right way or I just saw other people do it too. And I know that there's several people on this call who do the same. They step aside so that other people can step in, grow, and have that experience. And obviously, all of us would not have the careers or the experiences that we've had without someone creating opportunity for us. So as leaders in our program, it's our job to create some opportunities. Speaking of a couple things we can do as leaders, Dave mentioned about being approachable, creating opportunities. Rob kind of touches base with this whole idea of organization and communication here. So Rob, if you would speak to us a little bit about ways in which you try and use this scheduling program and ways to stay organized and communicate with people that have kind of helped you at least begin to go ahead and unite your program as well.
Sure. Thanks, Stu. One of the things I switched years ago over to was Arbiter Sports. I know there's other programs, but that has helped me tremendously when you have guys that do high school ball, NCAA, work other associations for travel baseball. That and we're pretty much everyone's on that system where, so if they're working for another group, they're blocked out. When I go to assign somebody for a game, their name doesn't even appear. So my list of people available goes from 100 to 25 instantaneously due to that fact. So then I'm not chasing 100 people, I'm chasing 25 to start with. So my initial group of people available, really, that helps me and saves me time in trying to get an assignment filled. And this year, traditionally I've always used email and text messaging to communicate with everybody. This year, I'm going to switch over and try an app called Slack, which is on the computer and cell phone. And it's based off everyone's email, so you don't need anyone's cell phone number, even on the phone app. But it's on the phone app, it's more like texting. So for the younger umpires that never check their email, or if they do, it's 3 days later than I needed them to look at it. I'm going to try this to see if I can get a little better communication and response from the younger umpires, where they tend to be on their phone more than computers. Or older umpires tend to go use their computers versus their phone. So I'm looking at different ways to hopefully communicate and get quicker responses, especially when it's, hey, I got 2 hours and I need a game covered, and getting a hold of somebody, because not all the younger umpires provide me their cell phone either. For various reasons, maybe their parents don't want it or whatever. But so I'm just looking for ways to try better communication for during the season to get games covered, and just to, hey, the rules got updated. Here's a link to the latest rules update. Just things like that, because you can do attachments and you can do links in this program, this app as well. So it might help in the communication, especially with the younger umpires. And to go back a little bit on what some of the other folks were saying, one of the things I did, I've been the UIC for Michigan District 6 since 2003. I started a rotation on our major boys district final plate. There's 6 guys that rotate, in a rotation. And the only time that rotation changes is if someone gets the regional and Indy, they automatically get the plate that year for earning that honor. So I try to pass, obviously the plate in the district final is always, the thing everyone wants. But I rotated, and I've rotated new people into that group of 6. Some people have retired, and I've moved new people in. So I think that's one way I've helped to keep the senior, seasoned umpires engaged, is that, they're going to get the plate and they know when it's going to be. And I'm not just the same 4 people doing the championship game every year. It's a rotation based upon merit and how much you gave to the program.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. One quick little follow up there with that rotation. You started to touch base with it at the end there in terms of how exactly you determine who gets to step in. When you say merit based, is it through like evaluations? Is that what you're referring to by merit?
Evaluations and just feedback throughout the season, because I have a form on my website that the managers evaluate, and obviously I tell them if it's a bunch of things about judgment calls, I'm not going to know them, but I want to hear good and bad about all our umpires, even the season guy, even myself. And I'm in that rotation. I don't bump anybody as the UIC. I keep my rotation, like everybody else. And it's based upon feedback throughout the season from board members, from managers. And that's also how I bring the younger umpires up through, and they'll start out at the 9-10, and they'll work their way up even, based upon evaluations. And sometimes I'll send a seasoned umpire to go evaluate a younger umpire and get some feedback and to help them, once they're into it and they're working their games, and give them pointers throughout the season.
Yeah. That's great stuff with the rotation and everything like that. I think that goes into, Gerard, your point here about inclusion. And Gerard, I'm going to ask you to follow up with this, because when people ask me about which World Series they should apply for other than Williamsport, the first one that comes off my mouth, and like I can't even get it out before they finish asking the question, is to go to Livermore. And one of the reasons why is, number one, you guys do a fantastic job out there. But Gerard, you have created an environment out there that allows people to thrive based upon that word inclusion. And it's something that I think everybody knows about, but it's like this thing in the distance that you just keep trying to grab. So Gerard, when you talk about inclusion as being the one thing all umpire programs should do, what exactly do you mean by that? Or how's it done?
Thanks, and it's really wonderful to be a part of this. And Stu, I applaud you tremendously for doing this and keeping us involved. It goes back to my personal experience, and I think that's very meaningful in what you do and how you progress and how you get better. When I started with Little League, we had a regional guy who was pretty dogmatic. It was my way or the highway. And if you sat in the front of the class and you asked a question and he didn't like your question, you were done. He drove so many people away from the program that it was, and I kind of saw that, and I knew that when I went to this training session. So I sat in the back and watched it and went, oh my God, this is crazy. He was fortunately replaced by a gentleman who took the opposite approach of being inclusive and, positive and respectful of everybody. And all ideas were good. And I think that is so important. So basically, in a nutshell, there it is.
Yeah. Treating people just the right way. Absolutely. And you guys have offered a ton of really good things. And I think I've got a couple people on there just to like try and copy and paste a lot of these ideas over to put in a document that I'll eventually go ahead and send out. I'm going ahead and sending out in the chat here right now that same document that we would have used last week. And as we get ready to wrap up some stuff here this week and just hearing everybody talk and reading through the chat and then hearing Dalton talk, I do want to revisit that document. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at that one, and that'll begin to round us back out. But go ahead and pop this up here for everybody right here, right now. Building a program at the local levels. It's still the same highlighted topics that we went through last week. But as you've heard Dalton speak, and then obviously as you have kind of heard a lot of our colleagues speak, a lot of this is really important for creating that culture. And there's a lot of really great podcasts out there right now, guys. The Focus 3 podcast, which is what Urban Meyer and Tim Kite put together. It's a great one on culture and leadership and how to manage personnel. And yes, it's Urban Meyer, so he's talking about sports and things like that too. But it's also what a lot of marketing strategies and businesses are using too. So that Focus 3 podcast, a great one to listen to as you think about ways to improve and build your umpire program as well. I'm going to go to page 2 here of this document as well in these 5 pillars. And creating that culture is what we spent a lot of time to be here with. And this whole idea of it being rooted in trust is what we've really spoken a lot to already today. Tom mentioned about rotating things around, inclusion from Gerard, creating opportunities, being approachable, as Dave mentioned. That is what builds trust. And as long as we can continue up here to go ahead and have our values and our expectations very clear, and we enforce those and we create opportunity, ultimately we are trying to build trust. And, I just ask, you to reflect upon this question here. What is your system of building trust? What is your system of building trust? And a lot of times that is like, what can you do for other people? And, organization, communication, scheduling ahead of time, and creating opportunities. I think those are some really tangible outcomes for us to think about. But here, when we talk about creating like trust, that whole idea of selflessness is a big part of it. What can you do for someone else? And I think that has to be at the heart of building your program, and a couple other different ideas as you empower and equip your people to succeed on the field are right there for you. recruiting and retaining, that's what Dalton touched base with a lot of stuff here today. Again, I think it's really important for us to go back up here and note that, it's really hard to recruit to something that you have nothing to recruit to. It's really hard to recruit people to something you do not have. So I think building that culture, your system, is really, really vital. And that way you can attract people. And back to Dalton's point, to figure out what people want and what motivates them, obviously being in touch and being able to serve them is exactly what we're looking here for. Recognizing, retaining, we've talked about equipment, indicators and things like that, concession rewards, and all those other kinds of things too. So, you can take that document and do whatever you want to with it. It's got some great ideas put into it, and share it with other people as well. But in terms of building a program, I think the cultural piece and the organizational piece is one of the biggest things that we can focus on. And then with that, not only do you have your culture, which is basically your system, your protocols and things like that, the policies, if you will, but it's also then how exactly are you developing your talent? And this conversation then beginning next week will kind of evolve away from this idea of building culture and kind of like what exactly do you do, to more than translating to this idea of how exactly do we develop our talent. So here in the future, we'll get ready to go ahead and talk about then developing our talent and how exactly everybody then does that here with all these things in mind in building a program. Everyone, thank you for sharing and thank you for your time here today. I really appreciate everyone being here, number one, and then secondly, sharing some great ideas. Huge thank you again to Dalton for talking about his experiences both in Little League and as a military recruiter, and how exactly then that corresponds and translates then to what we're trying to do here in this program as well. I really hope that everyone has found at least one thing from the day that they can go ahead and apply to their program and begin to think about. And as I mentioned here, when we get together next week, same time, same place, we'll kind of go away from culture building and building the program to developing our talent, which is really a big part of it, and a big selling point as we try to both recruit and retain some people as well. So that's the next step, the next direction in this conversation then is developing our talent. And that includes then, Steve, your point, a junior umpire program, which we'll touch base with, and then that idea of evaluation. How exactly do we then both attract, acquire, and then develop that talent? Guys, again, thank you for being here. Thanks to everyone who is joining us on replay. I appreciate you guys too. Same time, same place next week. I'll hold on like I normally do with any questions or just conversation that we can have. I'll get ready to stop the recording here in just a second as well. But everyone have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing everybody again, same time, same place next week for our continued talk, and probably the last piece of this then, and that is then developing your talent as umpires in your league. Thanks for being here, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll see everybody then next week.